Before we get into today's conversation, I need to ask you something. After your divorce, did you feel like you were losing your mind? Like you couldn't trust your own memory anymore? Like you were simultaneously relieved and completely shattered? If that's you, stay right here, because what you experienced may not just be heartbreak, it may be trauma. And today we're going to talk about why your brain feels the way it does, and what it actually takes to heal it. I have a board-certified psychiatrist in the chair with me today, and we are going to go deep. Welcome to Rebuilding Men After Divorce. I'm Marcus, and this channel exists for one reason. Because the men going through this deserve real support, real answers, and a place where somebody finally tells them the truth. Today's episode is one I've been wanting to do for a long time. We're talking about the mental health impact of divorcing a narcissist, the clinical side of what happens to your brain and your nervous system when you've spent months or years in a relationship with someone who manipulates, gaslights, and systematically tears you down. My guest today is Dr. Sarah Chen, a board-certified psychiatrist with over 15 years of clinical experience, specializing in trauma recovery, personality disorders, and men's mental health. Dr. Chen, thank you for being here. Let's start at the beginning, and I mean the very beginning. For men who just got out of a marriage or long-term relationship with a narcissist, what is actually happening inside them right now? Because I remember feeling like I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Thank you for having me, Marcus. What you're describing is incredibly common. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, your brain is essentially in a constant state of hypervigilance. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, always trying to anticipate their mood, always walking on eggshells. That chronic stress fundamentally alters how your nervous system operates. You're living in survival mode.
And then the relationship ends, and that threat theoretically goes away. But the brain doesn't just switch off.
Exactly. The brain has learned that this person is a source of both comfort and danger. And that's a very specific kind of psychological trap. What we see clinically is that the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, has been so chronically activated that it stays on high alert even after the relationship ends. Men describe it as feeling like they're still waiting to be attacked, even in a quiet room, even alone. That's not weakness. That's a nervous system that was trained to survive.
That's huge. And I think that explains why so many men, including me, ended up second-guessing the decision to leave, even when we knew the relationship was destroying us.
That's exactly it. And there's a neurochemical component too. Narcissistic relationships operate on intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable cycles of reward and punishment. That pattern actually floods the brain with dopamine during the good moments, which creates a biochemical attachment that can feel indistinguishable from love. So when men second-guess leaving, they're not being irrational. Their brain is literally going through withdrawal.
Let's talk about that shame for a second, because it's real. What are you seeing in your male patients specifically when they come in after leaving a narcissistic partner?
What I see most consistently is shame, and it's layered. There's shame about staying as long as they did, shame about not seeing it sooner, shame about the fact that they were manipulated at all, because there's this cultural narrative that men are supposed to be strong, logical, unaffected. And then there's a deeper shame. The shame of having loved someone who hurt them and still missing that person. That's a very painful place to be, and most men have no framework for processing it.
Say more about that. Complex PTSD versus regular PTSD. Because a lot of men I've talked to don't identify themselves as trauma survivors.
Right? So regular PTSD, what most people picture, typically develops from a single acute traumatic event. A car accident, combat, an assault. Complex PTSD, or CPTSD, develops from prolonged, repeated trauma, usually in a relationship where there's a power imbalance and no clear escape. Narcissistic abuse fits that profile almost perfectly. The symptoms look similar: hypervigilance, emotional dysregulation, intrusive thoughts, but CPTSD also includes profound damage to self-identity, chronic shame, and difficulty trusting your own perceptions. That last one is the gaslighting legacy.
The gaslighting legacy. That phrase is going to stick with me, because that's exactly what it is. It doesn't end when the relationship ends. So let's talk about what actually helps. When a man walks into your office carrying all of this, the hypervigilance, the shame, the CPTSD, what does real treatment look like? Because I think a lot of men have tried therapy and felt like it didn't work for them.
That's the most important question, and I want to be honest. Most men come in having already tried traditional talk therapy and felt like it didn't help. And there's a reason for that. Talk therapy is a top-down approach. You're using your prefrontal cortex, your rational mind, to try to process the trauma. But trauma doesn't live in your rational mind. It lives in your body, in your nervous system. So the treatments that actually work for CPTSD are bottom-up approaches: EMDR, somatic therapy, internal family systems. These work directly with the nervous system rather than trying to think your way through the pain. That's why men feel like they're spinning their wheels in traditional therapy. They're using the wrong tool.
That makes so much sense. And it explains why talk therapy alone can feel like spinning your wheels. You're trying to think your way out of something that lives in your body. I want to shift to something that I hear from men constantly, and it's this. After the divorce, they don't know who they are anymore. Not just, I'm sad, but a genuine loss of identity. Like the person they were before the relationship is gone. Is that a clinical phenomenon, or is it just grief?
It's both. And that distinction matters. Yes, there's grief. But what you're describing goes deeper than grief. In a long-term narcissistic relationship, the victim's identity gets systematically dismantled. The narcissist defines reality, defines who you are, defines what you're worth. Over time, men stop trusting their own instincts, their own preferences, their own sense of self. So when the relationship ends, there isn't a clear pre-relationship self to return to, because that self was eroded gradually, often over years. Rebuilding identity after this isn't about going back. It's about constructing something new, often for the first time as an adult. That's terrifying, but it's also an extraordinary opportunity.
I want to bring up something that makes all of this exponentially harder, and that's co-parenting. Because a lot of the men watching this didn't just divorce a narcissist. They have kids with one. They can't go no contact. They have to keep showing up to exchanges, to school events, to court hearings. What does that do to the recovery process? And how do you even begin to protect yourself when you can't cut off the source of the trauma?
Co-parenting with a narcissist is genuinely one of the hardest clinical situations I work with, because you're right. The standard advice of go no contact simply isn't available. What I tell men in this situation is, you have to shift the goal. The goal is no longer to co-parent in the traditional sense. The goal is parallel parenting. You disengage from the person, you communicate only in writing, only about the children, only about logistics. You stop trying to reason with them, stop trying to defend yourself, stop engaging with the chaos they create. You become a gray rock, boring, unresponsive. You give them nothing to feed on, and you protect your nervous system by accepting that you cannot control what happens in their house, only what happens in yours.
Dr. Chen, I want to ask you the question that every man watching this is probably asking right now. If you could give them one thing, one concrete thing they can do today, not in 6 months of therapy, not after they've read 10 books, what would it be? What's the single most important first step toward actually healing from this?
Name it. That's it. The single most powerful thing a man can do today is say, out loud or in writing, "What happened to me was abuse. I am a trauma survivor." Not because labels define you, but because your brain cannot begin to heal something it hasn't been allowed to acknowledge. So many men are still in a fog of self-blame, still asking, "What did I do wrong?" Still minimizing what they went through. The moment you name it accurately, this was psychological abuse, this caused real neurological damage, and I deserve to heal from it. Something shifts. It's not a cure, but it's the door. Everything else walks through that door.
Dr. Sarah Chen, thank you, genuinely, because what you just gave these men is something most of them have never had. A clinical framework for understanding why they feel the way they feel, and permission to take it seriously. If you're watching this and you heard yourself in any part of this conversation, the hypervigilance, the shame, the identity loss, the fog, I want you to hear this directly. What happened to you was real, the damage is real, and the healing is real too. It takes the right tools, the right support, and the willingness to name it for what it was. That's where it starts. If this episode helped you, share it with a man who needs it. Subscribe because we go deep here every week. And drop a comment below. Tell me what landed for you today. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.